It's funny how every town has its share of urban legends, isn't it? Stories passed around at campfires or whispered in dark corners of high school cafeterias. But in Texas, those legends feel different. Maybe it's the vast, endless highways or the way the air gets heavier at night, like it knows something you don't. These aren't just stories. They're warnings. And the locals? They take them seriously. Take the devil's spine, for example. Sounds dramatic, right? But say those words to someone from around here, and you'll see a shadow cross their face. It's a stretch of highway, winding through desolate hills where the trees twist unnaturally, their branches clawing at the sky like they're trying to warn you. People say if you drive it at midnight, strange things happen. Some cars vanish without a trace. Others return, but the people inside, well, they're not quite the same anymore. Of course, you'll find plenty of skeptics, people who laugh it off, call it a load of nonsense. But then there's the story of Ben Fisher. Just last month, he went missing on the Spine. Young guy, full of life, heading back home after a late-night shift. He sent a text to his girlfriend at 11:57 p.m. Almost there, and then nothing. His car was found abandoned the next day, still running, headlights cutting through the fog. No Ben, no sign of a struggle, just the faint smell of burnt rubber and something metallic in the air. That disappearance brought the Spine back into the spotlight, stirring up the old tales. And as you'd expect, a group of friends decided it'd be the perfect chance to prove everyone wrong. Urban legends are just that, legends, they said. They were determined to drive the Spine at midnight, document it, laugh in the face of fear. But as the clock ticked closer to their departure, something in the air shifted. You know that feeling when you're about to do something you know you shouldn't? Like standing on the edge of a cliff, peering down, and your body screams, "Step back." That's the kind of unease that settled in. But they ignored it. They always do. Midnight came, and the car doors slammed shut. The engine roared to life, and they pulled onto the highway. What happened next? Well, that's where things get interesting. Sam was the one who first brought up the idea. Always the practical one. She said it was a chance to put this nonsense to rest. Jenna, her best friend since high school, had other reasons. As a journalist, she saw it as the perfect story. Urban legends, disappearances, a haunted highway. It practically wrote itself. Ryan, of course, was in it for the laughs. The guy couldn't take anything seriously, cracking jokes at every turn. Then there was Mia. Sweet, quiet Mia, who believed in things the rest of them didn't. Ghosts, curses, the kind of stuff you'd roll your eyes at until you saw her face when she talked about it. The plan seemed simple enough. Take a road trip, drive the Devil's Spine at midnight, and see what happened. If nothing else, it would make for a great story. Jenna had even brought an old-school tape recorder, the kind with actual cassettes, to capture the night. She said it added authenticity. Ryan called it a murder weapon from a thrift store. The drive started out like any other road trip. Snacks piled high, music blaring, Ryan doing terrible impressions of every horror movie villain he could think of. "Oh no, the big bad Spine is coming for us," he howled, waving an empty chip bag like a ghost. Mia, sitting in the back seat next to him, didn't laugh. She just stared out the window, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweatshirt. About an hour into the trip, Jenna pulled out the journal. She'd found it earlier that week at an estate sale. It was old, the leather cover cracked and brittle, the pages yellowed. This she said, holding it up like a prize, is the real deal. Belonged to some guy who supposedly drove the spine back in the 70s. He didn't disappear, but he claimed he saw things. Sam glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Define things. Symbols, shadows, stuff that doesn't make sense. Look, Jenna flipped open the journal and handed it to Mia, who reluctantly took it. The pages were filled with rough sketches, twisted trees, spirals, strange marks that looked like they'd been carved into wood. Mia traced a finger over one of the symbols, her brow furrowing. Ryan leaned over to peek. What is that? Some kind of alien crop circle? Mia shook her head. I don't know, it feels familiar. Familiar? Sam asked, her tone skeptical. Mia hesitated. My grandmother used to talk about symbols like these. She said they were warnings. Ryan snorted. Warnings about what? Bad art? About things we're not supposed to mess with, Mia said quietly. For the first time that night, Ryan didn't have a comeback. Jenna, undeterred, leaned forward and pointed at a section of the journal. Listen to this, she said, her voice low. She read aloud. The journey begins with the first step, but it only begins when you turn back. The car fell silent, the weight of the words settling over them. What does that even mean? Sam finally asked, her hands tightening on the wheel. Jenna shrugged. Beats me. But isn't it creepy? Ryan forced a laugh. Yeah, creepy. Or just the ramblings of some dude who watched too much Twilight Zone? Mia, still holding the journal, whispered, What if it's a warning? Jenna turned to her. A warning for what? Mia didn't answer. She just looked out the window again, her reflection pale against the darkening sky. The journal sat open in her lap. The words, It only begins when you turn back, staring up at her like a challenge. The road felt different the moment they turned onto the Devil's Spine. The pavement was rough, worn and cracked, as if it hadn't seen maintenance in decades. Trees lined both sides, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands, clawing at the edges of the road. The air felt heavy, damp, carrying the faint metallic tang of decay. Somewhere in the distance, a single coyote howled, its cry fading into an unnatural silence that seemed to swallow everything. Sam slowed the car down, her fingers gripping the wheel tightly. This is it, she muttered. Ryan leaned forward from the back seat, peering out into the darkness. Well, it sure lives up to the name. Creepy as hell. Jenna was focused on the GPS, its glowing screen casting an eerie light on her face. It says we've got about 6 miles to go, but look at this, she said, holding it up. The screen flickered, the little blue dot jumping back and forth like it couldn't decide where they were. Bad signal? Or maybe it's the ghosts messing with us, Ryan teased, nudging Mia. She didn't respond, her gaze fixed out the window. The headlights flickered once, then twice, plunging them into brief moments of darkness. Sam swore under her breath and tapped the dashboard. Great, just what we need, electrical issues. Or cursed highway issues, Ryan chimed in with a nervous chuckle. Jenna ignored him, her attention shifting to the radio. It had been playing music earlier, but now it was all static, interspersed with faint, garbled voices. She leaned forward and turned the dial, but the voices only grew louder, more distorted. Words started to form, faint and fragmented. Turn back. Don't. She snapped the radio off. Okay, that's officially weird. Mia finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. It's not just the radio. She pointed to the window. Something's out there? Sam glanced at her in the rearview mirror. What do you mean, something? Mia shook her head, clutching the journal tightly. I don't know. I feel it. They all fell silent, the tension in the car thickening as Sam pressed forward. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches casting long skeletal shadows across the road. Then the smell hit them, sharp and metallic, mixed with the earthy rot of decaying leaves. Jenna wrinkled her nose. What is that? Something dead, Ryan guessed, though he didn't sound as casual as usual. Sam slowed the car as a shape came into view on the side of the road. What the hell? She brought the car to a stop, the headlights illuminating what looked like a torn piece of fabric snagged on a low-hanging branch. Jenna opened the door before anyone could stop her. Wait, Sam called, but Jenna was already out, stepping cautiously toward the branch. The fabric was tattered, frayed at the edges, and stained with something dark that glistened under the light. Jenna's hand hovered over it, but didn't touch. It's wet, she called back, her voice tight, and I'm pretty sure this isn't mud. Mia climbed out, joining her despite Sam's protests. Look, she said, pointing at the ground. A trail of faint, smudged footprints led into the trees, disappearing into the shadows. Jenna shivered. Let's just get back in the car. No one argued. They climbed back in, and Sam hit the gas a little harder than necessary. The car surged forward, the tension inside thick enough to choke on. Then the GPS glitched again. The screen flashed, the map reloading, but the road didn't seem to change. The same curves, the same trees, the same darkness. Sam glanced at Jenna. How much further? Jenna stared at the screen, her face pale. We should have been there by now. Ryan leaned forward, staring out the windshield. Wait a second. Haven't we passed that tree before? Sam's knuckles whitened on the wheel. That's not possible. But deep down, they all knew. The road wasn't just winding, it was looping, and no matter how far they drove, it didn't seem to end. The air inside the car was stifling, heavy with an unspoken dread. The silence between them felt louder than any argument. Jenna stared at the GPS, which was now completely blank. The screen dark, except for an occasional flicker. Ryan drummed his fingers on the door, his usual humor nowhere to be found. Mia sat rigid, clutching the journal like it was her lifeline, while Sam kept her eyes fixed on the road, her jaw clenched so tightly it looked like it might snap. Then Jenna gasped, her hand gripping the edge of her seat. "Did you see that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "See what?" Sam asked, not looking away from the road. Jenna turned in her seat, her eyes scanning the darkness behind them. There was something in the mirror, a shadow. It was there, and then it wasn't. Ryan forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow. "Great, now the shadows are out to get us." "Fantastic." "I'm not kidding," Jenna snapped. "It was there. I know what I saw." Before anyone could respond, a faint laugh echoed from outside, low and distorted, like a recording played in reverse. Ryan froze, his head tilting toward the window. "You guys hear that?" "Hear what?" Sam asked, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "That laugh," Ryan whispered, leaning closer to the glass. "It's like someone's out there laughing." "No one's out there?" Sam said firmly, though her voice wavered. Mia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Stop the car," she said suddenly. "What? Why?" Sam glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Just stop." Mia's voice cracked, her hands gripping the journal so tightly the pages crumpled. Sam slammed on the brakes, and the car skidded to a stop in the middle of the road. "What is it, Mia?" she demanded. But Mia didn't answer right away. Instead, she slowly rolled up her sleeve, revealing a faint red mark on her arm, like the imprint of fingers. "Something grabbed me," she whispered. "I felt it." "That's not possible," Jenna said, though her voice lacked conviction. Ryan rubbed his hands over his face, groaning. "Okay, this is getting insane. Shadows, laughing, invisible handprints. What's next? The car starts bleeding?" "Shut up, Ryan," Sam snapped, slamming her hand against the steering wheel. "This isn't a joke." Suddenly, her hand froze. Her eyes widened as she stared at the dashboard. What is this?" she whispered. The others leaned forward to see. Carved into the plastic were strange symbols, the same ones from the journal. They hadn't been there before. Jenna's breath hitched. How is that even possible?" "I don't know," Sam muttered, her voice shaking. "Guys," Mia interrupted, her voice trembling as she flipped through the journal. "I think we've already triggered it." "Triggered what?" Ryan asked, panic creeping into his voice. "The legend," Mia said, holding up a page filled with jagged writing. "It says, 'The road demands payment. Those who enter must face what they fear most. Turn back, and it will only grow stronger.'" "Great," Ryan muttered. "So what? We're cursed now?" Before anyone could answer, a figure appeared in the headlights. A man, tall and unmoving, standing in the middle of the road. His face was obscured, his body unnaturally still. "Do you see that?" Jenna whispered. Sam didn't respond. She just gripped the wheel tighter and slammed her foot on the brake, swerving hard to avoid the figure. The car spun out of control, the tires screeching as it veered off the road and into the trees. The impact was sudden, jarring, and then everything went still. The only sound was the faint creak of metal and the labored breathing of everyone inside. And then, from somewhere outside the car came a slow, deliberate knock. The first thing they noticed was the silence. No wind, no animals, just an oppressive, suffocating stillness. The car was totaled, the front end crumpled against a tree, but somehow none of them were hurt. Sam climbed out first, holding her arm where the seatbelt had dug into her skin. "Is everyone okay?" she called, her voice cutting through the eerie calm. Jenna staggered out next, followed by Mia, clutching the journal like it might disappear. Ryan stumbled out last, brushing dirt off his shirt. "Define okay?" he muttered, looking around. "Where the hell are we?" The woods were dense, the trees gnarled and impossibly tall, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. It felt like they were trapped in a different world. Sam pulled her phone out of her pocket, the screen lighting up her worried expression. "No signal," she said flatly. "Same here," Jenna added, trying to refresh her GPS. "Nothing, just a spinning wheel." Mia opened the journal, flipping through the pages frantically. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "No, no, no." "What?" Sam asked, moving closer. "The pages," Mia said, holding the journal out. Every single one was blank. The warnings, the sketches, the cryptic messages, all gone. "That's impossible," Jenna said, snatching it from her. But no matter how much she flipped through, it was the same. Nothing. Ryan kicked a rock in frustration. "Okay, this is officially the worst road trip ever. Can we please just start walking and find some help?" Sam nodded reluctantly. "We need to move. Staying here isn't going to solve anything." They started walking, their footsteps crunching on the forest floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the stillness. The deeper they went, the stranger the woods became. They passed an old, rusted car, its windows smashed, vines growing through the seats. A few feet away, a torn jacket hung limply from a branch, the fabric stained and faded. "Looks like someone else didn't make it out," Ryan muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't say that," Mia said, glancing nervously at the shadows around them. Jenna crouched next to the car, picking up something from the ground. It was a child's shoe, scuffed and dirty, the laces frayed. She dropped it quickly, like it burned her hand. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice shaking. They pressed on, the air growing colder with every step. The whispers started softly, just on the edge of hearing. At first, they thought it was the wind, but the patterns were too deliberate. Words formed and faded, indistinct but unmistakably human. "Did you hear that?" Jenna whispered. "Hear what?" Sam asked, her voice tight. "Voices. They're saying something." Ryan laughed nervously. "Great. First shadows, now voices. What's next? A marching band?" "Ryan!" Mia snapped, her voice unusually sharp. "Shut up!" He threw his hands up defensively, but fell silent. The whispers grew louder, coming from all around them. The shadows between the trees seemed to shift, moving closer, always just out of reach. Then they found the clearing. In the center stood a massive tree, its bark blackened and scarred, etched with symbols identical to the ones that had been in the journal. The air around it was cold, biting, and carried the faint smell of sulfur. What is that?" Jenna asked, taking a step back. "It's the tree," Mia whispered, "from the sketches. It's real." Ryan approached it cautiously, his usual bravado replaced with unease. "Looks like someone had a lot of free time and a knife," he joked weakly, running his fingers over one of the symbols. "Don't touch it," Mia snapped, grabbing his arm and pulling him back. "Why not?" he asked, but his voice wavered. "Because I think this is the heart of it," Mia said, staring at the tree. "Whatever's happening to us, it's tied to this." Before anyone could respond, the laughter started, low and guttural at first, then rising into a maniacal cackle that echoed through the trees. It was Ryan's laugh, but twisted, distorted. "Ryan," Sam said, turning to him, "what's so funny?" But he wasn't laughing. He was staring at the tree, his face pale, his mouth slightly open. "That's not me," he whispered. And then he was gone. One moment he was standing there, and the next, the shadows swallowed him whole. His laughter lingered, echoing unnaturally through the woods, growing fainter with each passing second until it disappeared entirely. "Ryan!" Sam shouted, running toward the tree, but there was no sign of him. Only the whispers, growing louder, mocking, and the overwhelming feeling that they were no longer alone. The clearing felt alive, pulsing with a quiet, sinister energy. The massive tree loomed over them, its etched symbols glowing faintly in the dim light. Sam paced near its base, her breaths shallow and quick. Jenna stood frozen, staring at the twisted bark as though it might lunge at her. Mia clutched the journal, her knuckles white, her lips moving soundlessly like she was trying to pray. "Ryan," Sam muttered, shaking her head. "He was just here. He was right here." "Where did he go?" Jenna asked, her voice sharp with panic. "People don't just vanish." Mia's eyes darted between the tree and the shadows at its base. "This isn't just a tree," she said, her voice trembling. "It's something else. I think it's feeding on us." "Feeding on us?" Jenna snapped, her frustration boiling over. "What does that even mean, Mia?" "It's using our fear," Mia replied, clutching the journal tighter. That's why the whispers, the laughter, it's breaking us down. Sam crouched by the tree, her hand brushing against the ground. Look, she said, holding up a familiar piece of fabric. It was Ryan's jacket, torn and smeared with dirt. She stood abruptly, her voice cracking. He has to be close. We need to find him. Before anyone could respond, a scream tore through the woods, high-pitched, raw, and unmistakably Sam's. But Sam was standing right there, her face pale and her eyes wide. "What the hell?" she whispered, taking a step back. "Did you?" Jenna stammered, her voice barely audible. "Did you hear that?" "It was me," Sam said, her voice hollow. But it wasn't. The scream came again, echoing from somewhere deep in the woods. Sam turned toward the sound, her feet moving instinctively before Mia grabbed her arm. "Don't," Mia said firmly. "It's not real. Whatever this is, it's trying to split us up." Sam shook her off. "What if it is real? What if he's hurt and needs us?" "He's gone, Sam," Jenna snapped. "If we go out there, we'll be next." Sam hesitated, her fists clenched, her breathing uneven. "We can't just—" "We're not leaving," Mia interrupted, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Not yet. There's something we're missing. Something in the journal." Jenna frowned. "The journal's blank, Mia?" Mia opened it again, flipping through the empty pages, her brow furrowed. Then slowly, faint marks began to appear, like ink bleeding through from the other side. They weren't the sketches or warnings they'd seen before. These were instructions. "It's not a warning," Mia whispered, her face paling. "It's bait." "What?" Sam asked, stepping closer. "This journal," Mia said, holding it up. "It was planted. It was meant to bring people here, to bring us here." Jenna stared at her, disbelief etched across her face. "By who?" "Not who," Mia replied, her voice dropping. "What? This tree, this thing. It's been luring people for years, feeding off them, off their fear, their desperation, and now it has us." The ground beneath their feet felt colder, the air thick with the scent of sulfur. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as though reacting to Mia's words. "We have to leave," Sam said suddenly, her voice shaking. "We have to get out of here." "Leave?" Jenna said with a hollow laugh. "How? The road loops, the forest traps us, and now you want to just walk away?" "We don't have a choice," Sam shouted, spinning to face her. As they argued, Mia's hands began to tingle. She looked down, her heart skipping a beat. The symbols, the same ones carved into the tree, were glowing faintly on her skin, tracing along her wrists like veins of fire. "Guys," she whispered, stepping back, "something's wrong." Sam and Jenna turned to her, their eyes widening as they saw the marks spreading. "What is that?" Sam asked, panic creeping into her voice. "I don't know," Mia said, her voice trembling, "but I think I'm marked." Before anyone could respond, the whispers rose to a deafening roar, and the ground beneath them began to shift, as though something massive was stirring below. Jenna gripped the jagged branch tightly, her knuckles white as she stared at the tree. The glow of the symbols was brighter now, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. The whispers were deafening, swirling around them like a storm. "It's the tree," she said, her voice firm despite the chaos. "It's the source. If we destroy it, maybe we can stop this." Sam looked doubtful but nodded, grabbing a nearby rock. "Worth a shot." Mia stood back, clutching the journal, her face pale and unreadable. "You don't understand," she murmured, almost to herself. "It's not just the tree." Jenna turned to her. What are you talking about? Mia didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on the tree, her lips moving as if reciting something under her breath. The glow from the symbols on her skin had spread, snaking up her arms like living fire. "Mia," Sam said sharply, stepping closer. "Hey, snap out of it." The effect was immediate. The symbols burned brighter, their glow almost blinding. The whispers turned into screams, low, guttural, and filled with agony. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the air grew thick with the acrid smell of burning wood and something far worse. "It's working!" Jenna shouted over the noise. But then Mia laughed. It was a low, unsettling sound, completely out of character. Jenna and Sam turned to her, their eyes widening in horror. Her face was calm, her eyes unnaturally dark, the glow from the symbols on her skin now blinding. Still, Mia didn't respond. Instead, her head tilted slightly, as though listening to something only she could hear. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, shaping into words. "Burn it." Jenna and Sam exchanged a glance. "She's right," Jenna said, her voice edged with desperation. "We need to burn it." Sam hesitated, but then nodded. She dug into her backpack and pulled out a lighter. "If this doesn't work, it will," Jenna cut her off, her voice more confident than she felt. They approached the tree together, the air growing colder with each step. Sam flicked the lighter, the small flame flickering weakly against the oppressive darkness. She touched it to the base of the tree, and the fire caught instantly, roaring to life as though the tree had been soaked in gasoline. "You think you're stopping it," she said, her voice layered with something that wasn't her own. "But you're feeding it." "What?" Sam asked, stepping back. "What are you talking about?" Mia gestured to the tree, her movement slow and deliberate. "The flames. They're not destroying the portal, they're opening it." Jenna's heart sank as she turned back to the tree. The fire wasn't consuming it, it was transforming it. The bark peeled away, revealing a swirling, otherworldly void at its center. The screams turned into a deafening roar, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "We have to go," Jenna shouted, grabbing Sam's arm. "Now!" But Mia blocked their path, her movements jerky and unnatural, like a puppet on strings. "You can't leave," she said, her voice eerily calm. "You're part of it now." "Mia, please," Sam begged, her voice cracking. "This isn't you. Fight it." For a moment, Mia hesitated, her expression flickering with something like recognition. But then the glow intensified and she lunged at them. Sam shoved her aside, grabbing Jenna's hand, and they ran. The forest seemed alive, the trees twisting and groaning as shadowy figures emerged from the darkness. They were fast, moving in jerky, unnatural bursts, their shapes indistinct and wrong. The ground beneath Jenna and Sam's feet seemed to shift and ripple like they were running on quicksand. "Keep going!" Jenna shouted, pulling Sam along. "We're almost there." The faint outline of the road appeared ahead, but the shadows were closing in, their distorted whispers turning into an ear-splitting cacophony. Then Sam tripped. Jenna felt her hand slip away and turned just in time to see Sam fall, her body swallowed by the encroaching darkness. "Sam!" she screamed, her voice breaking. The last thing she saw was Sam's terrified face before the shadows consumed her, leaving nothing but silence. The road appeared suddenly, cutting through the darkness like a lifeline. Jenna stumbled onto it, her lungs burning, her legs shaking. Mia followed a few steps behind, her movements slow and dreamlike, as if she didn't fully understand what was happening. For a moment, Jenna just stood there, staring at the empty stretch of asphalt. The forest loomed behind them, silent and still, as though nothing had ever stirred within it. The air felt wrong, too quiet, too calm, like the world was holding its breath. "Mia," Jenna said, her voice raw. "We made it! We're out!" Mia didn't respond. She blinked slowly, her face blank, her arms hanging loosely at her sides. "Out?" she repeated, her tone flat. "Out of what?" Jenna turned to her, frowning. "The tree, the shadows, all of it. Don't you remember?" Mia tilted her head, confusion clouding her expression. "What are you talking about? We've just been driving, right? That's what we were doing." Jenna's stomach dropped. "Mia, you—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "Never mind. Let's just get out of here." The car was parked a few yards away, perfectly intact, as if it had never crashed. Jenna hesitated, glancing back toward the forest. There was no sign of the clearing, no glowing symbols, no twisted tree. Just the road disappearing into the darkness. She helped Mia into the passenger seat and slid into the driver's side, her hands trembling as she gripped the wheel. The engine roared to life, and the headlights cut through the thick night. For the first time in what felt like hours, they were moving. Mia stared out the window, her reflection faint against the glass. "It's so quiet," she murmured. "Peaceful." Jenna glanced at her, unease twisting in her chest. Something was off. The way Mia sat, the way her voice sounded, it was too calm, too detached, like she was someone else entirely. Her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, and her breath caught. Mia's shadow moved on its own, twisting unnaturally, its edges flickering like it didn't belong. Jenna forced herself to look away, her grip on the wheel tightening. "Almost there," she muttered, more to herself than to Mia. The miles passed in silence. The road stretched endlessly ahead, the dark horizon never getting closer. Jenna's heart pounded, the rhythm syncing with the faint pulse of the headlights. And then she saw it. In the rearview mirror, standing in the middle of the road behind them, was the tree. The same gnarled trunk, the same glowing symbols, its branches stretching out like claws. Her hands froze on the wheel. The car kept moving, but her mind reeled, unable to process what she was seeing. The tree wasn't just behind them, it was watching. "Mia," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "do you see?" But when she turned, the road behind them was empty. Just dark pavement and the faint glow of the taillights. She swallowed hard, forcing her eyes back to the mirror. The tree was gone. Jenna exhaled shakily, her pulse racing. She glanced at Mia, who was still staring blankly out the window, her lips curled in the faintest hint of a smile. "Some legends aren't meant to be understood," Jenna muttered, her voice breaking the suffocating silence. "They're meant to remind us that evil doesn't just live in stories, it lives here."